Perhaps later I can attend to more of this urgent business. I'm sure there's loads of kittens stuck in trees and toddlers in want of their teddies.
If you've ever found yourself wondering, you know what dragons really need? Jetpacks. Jetpacks and political debates. Well, then you are likely at the right place with Divinity Dragon Commander, a new strategy game developed by Larian Studios. Divinity Dragon Commander includes many different aspects, ranging from branching dialogue to a conquest-style map. But the big question, of course, is, have these aspects come together in any meaningful way? Have they succeeded?
Preferred conversation to combustion? What a nincompoop.
In Divinity Dragon Commander, you do actually play as a dragon that is in fact a commander. And as pretty much anyone would do if they had the ability to instantly shapeshift into an oversized fire-breathing lizard, you must conquer the entire planet. Being the son of the former emperor, you have a good claim to the title, and wizard Maxos assists you by giving you your own futuristic steampunk airship with all the technology and magic as you could imagine. This airship is beautifully designed and oozes with character, with a set of different rooms all dedicated to a different goal, ranging from upgrading your army to having discussions with the lively people in the bar. In the campaign of Divinity Dragon Commander, you will in fact do a lot of talking, specifically in the form of politics. As the new and upcoming emperor, it is your duty to decide over a multitude of issues, and unexpectedly, these issues are hard-hitting and relevant to this very day, as you discuss freedom, civil rights, or the environment with money-hungry dwarves and fanatic undead, creating a curious case of direct concerns about society and morality mixed with a relatively typical fantasy world. The actual consequences of this political system, in addition to discussions with your crew members and even marrying one of the stunningly beautiful princesses, mostly relate to the statistical values and rewards that improve your chances of success in the strategy map. The only unfortunate aspect here is that the consequences are not overly dramatic. You will at no point have the lizards turn against you, or the imps trying to blow up your ship if you upset them long enough, which is definitely a shame. Instead, you will have a hard time fighting on specific locations on the strategy map. But what it does do is increase the replay value of the single player experience by offering subtle changes in the way the story plays out. These dialogue discussions and conversations with the various characters are hugely amusing and highly enhance the enjoyment of the campaign. The strategy map, the Risk Conquest style gameplay, works the same in both single player and multiplayer, with the exception that the political gameplay is not present in multiplayer. On this board, you control pawns that you must first research and then purchase yourself, taking good care of your gold and research income, placing buildings on the right locations, and additionally using the correct cards whenever necessary works well. The mechanics here are advanced enough, and this can be played with up to 3 other enemies. In the single player, the political consequences here mostly come in the form of changing the popularity with certain races, making it very tough to take over certain countries. In the multiplayer, which has a good amount of customization in the lobbies, this system works well in a 2 versus 2 scenario, but becomes a little weird in a 4-player free-for-all. Every time your army clashes with an enemy, you have the option of resolving this in 2 ways, either through auto-resolving the combat or by jumping into the real-time strategy aspect of the game. However, every time this occurs, every player can react, regardless of who is actually fighting over this piece of land, meaning that in a free-for-all situation, you will be fighting 2 enemy players that essentially have no stake in this battle, meaning it becomes a little odd, whereas it otherwise works well in the 2 versus 2 or merely against the AI. Though the AI is mostly competent and Divinity Dragon Commander is certainly not an easy game, they do tend to make questionable decisions, pointlessly sacrificing units into your lands and having little variety in how they play on certain maps. The biggest issue, however, comes in the form of the auto-resolve system that is far too often very unreliable and unpredictable, creating for situations where you lose units or lose entirely in a situation that should have been an easy victory, causing quite a lot of frustration for an otherwise enjoyable gameplay mode. The third big aspect to Divinity Dragon Commander is the actual RTS mode. In this mode you micromanage your units and better yet can transform into a dragon pretty much whenever you feel like it. This mode very much has its ups and downs. Transforming into and controlling the actual dragon is a ton of fun to do. The sense of speed is well done, and due to the fact that you do have a jetpack, you can glide across the battlefield in an incredibly fast pace, dodging incoming missiles as you do so and casting a variety of researched dragon abilities upon both allies and enemies. During your time as a dragon, you can still control your army, though it is certainly not as precise and easy to do. And if you mastered the various hotkeys, you could potentially stay in this mode for a very long time, though the dragon can die incredibly quickly if not supported by an army. But you will likely switch in and out, as the regular camera perspective is much easier to command your armies with. Unfortunately, the actual camera controls are rather iffy. Though the big downside here is that the actual RTS aspects are just underwhelming in general. There is but one faction in Divinity Dragon Commander, and although you must of course research most of these things, you will fight enemies with the same units and upgrades. Now, the units themselves certainly have a good amount of synergy with both each other and the dragon, meaning you can pull off some great advanced tactics, such as supporting your artillery with range increasing air units, or teleporting a small army to a cloaked unit, but at the end of the day, your actual unit pool is highly limited. Much like the rest of the game, the units do have a great sense of personality, and although the details on both the terrain and units are meager, the maps themselves look appealing, especially from a distance. The layouts of these maps is a burden on the game though. Maps are often small and are filled with cliffs, rivers and mountains, creating hugely limiting paths your ground or sea forces can follow, meaning you won't generally be doing many flanking or surprise attacks. In addition, this also means there is no free base building in Divinity Dragon Commander. Instead, it follows a control node system where the presence of ground forces slowly takes over neutral and enemy structures, which is not very enjoyable and feels highly limiting. In general, Divinity Dragon Commander seems to do its name credit. Shooting across the battlefield and bombarding your enemies with fire is satisfying, and the NPC interaction in the single player is a great addition that makes the game both amusing and grants it more replay value. The Conquest-style strategy map game mode is every now and then completely unreliable, but this is nothing they couldn't easily patch out. And regardless, is largely a ton of fun in both the single player itself and in a 2 vs 2 multiplayer scenario. The mechanics here are advanced enough with clever use of sabotage and mercenary cards and the likes, correct placement of structures, resource management, and of course creating a good army composition. It is then mainly the RTS aspects that are a big letdown in Divinity Dragon Commander, showing that the game does suffer from having such a broad set of features with less focus than it could have had. The RTS mechanics are very limiting in both the unit compositions, the controls do not feel that great, and the map layout gives you a very limited way of handling the situation. But if you were to play this game for the dialogue and conquest gameplay, you will definitely have a good time, and I would then recommend you set up multiplayer games in such a way that you have to rely on the RTS army units as little as possible, as controlling these army units is mostly tedious, while being a freaking dragon is a great time. Divinity Dragon Commander gets a 7.5 out of 10.